film industry for many, many years, and very familiar with all the tricks of the trade, special effects, and how it's done. And I came across Widener's whole analysis into how Kubrick was allowed to actually put 2001, why he was allowed to do this, why he was allowed to make subsequent movies like The Shining and Lolita and so on. As Lolita actually came before 2001, but why he was allowed to make these movies that are part of his legacy. And it all went down to the idea Widener is convinced that Kubrick was the man that faked the Apollo 11 landings. And he goes into an extremely detailed forensic, and I should say cinematic forensic look into the special effects of 2001, and you see exactly the same telltale signs from the Apollo 11, not the subsequent Apollo landings, but from the Apollo 11 stuff. You see exactly the same telltale signs of a technique called front projection, which was the means by which they used to do special effects before the famous blue screen technique came on. And this, was very compelling to me. But as I looked into it even more, what Widener was saying was that by faking footage for the American space program so that it wouldn't be a disaster if they didn't make it to the moon, or even if they didn't go to the moon, whatever the take is, Kubrick basically negotiated a deal where he was allowed to make whatever movie he wanted to make. And he made 2001 concurrently with his work on the Apollo 11 stuff and subsequent movies after that. And if you look at the picture credits at the end of 2001, you will see picture credits there that are in no other science fiction or space-based movie. It is an absolute who's who of the NASA military industrial complex in terms of people who are involved more in the space program than they are in the film industry. And that's quite a testament to Kubrick's pull to bring these people involved into this film. But no one's ever been able to do that since. And, of course, Kubrick went on to make a lot of these different expose-type movies. I mean, on my website, I've got an article where I list the key films where he's involved in. And, yes, he did die at the end of Eyes Wide Shut, probably his most overt occult-based film. But we all tend to forget as well that he was in the middle of producing a now-forgotten film called AI, or Artificial Intelligence.
That's right.
And that's right. And he basically died in the middle of that, and they gave that to Spielberg to finish off. And apparently he butchered the story significantly in the same way that Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut final edit was completely butchered to almost make a nonsensical movie after he died, before they released it. AI, the story was butchered, but as Jay Widener points out, if you think about the subject matter that AI is about, it's about a parent who wants a child to replace their lost 12-year-old boy, and so they get an android, basically a robot, that is almost perfectly, exactly like a child, but it never ages. And Widener makes the extremely insightful remark, which particular sub part of our society would want a 12-year-old boy that would never age. It's not a mother. A mother likes to see their children grow up, likes to see them go through the process of life from young to old and so on, get married or whatever it is that they have, that they hope for there in the future. But Widener points that in the pedophile view of the world, you couldn't think of a better creation than a perpetually young 12-year-old boy as is portrayed in AI. And I think that that Kubrick was very much on track to exposing the extremely dark sexual, ritualistic, and murderous sort of side of an elite, behind the scenes elite. At that time, he'd reached that stage in life where he was really starting to push it. But some people believe he may have actually paid the ultimate price as a result of that.
Indeed, and ultimately, unfortunately, it sort of kind of comes down to that variable. I mean, look at Bill Cooper, who was a part of the military complex and basically predicted 9/11 and was like, look, this is what's going down on the burner, bang, bang, boom. And then him and his wife and family, they get infiltrated and get basically barraged. So, eventually some of these people who are in the underground, they get taken out. It is what it is. You give up too much information to the people. But as I say, Pandora's box has been opened, and, it is what it is. And I think that as time goes along, a lot more things are going to come out. And speaking about time, I perceive, you talk about these rituals that go down with the Saturn death cult. Do you perceive that they constantly are trying to recreate these ancient timelines, these events, along with creating new ones, if you will, to basically pull something into this awareness as this alignment goes down? I mean, because let's call a spade, Troy. During the Christmas holiday and the Festival of Lights, that's actually a Saturn concept, if you will.
Totally.
It's a total Saturn concept. So do you perceive that, I'm going to go to the environment with recreating a huge event. During the ancient times when Saturn was where it was, there was this huge flood. And isn't it sort of interesting that we have all of this global warming things going on and the glaciers and water melting and people predicting that there's literally the propensity of a great flood happening? Do you think that through the advent of corporations and industry that they do this on purpose to speed those events up, to literally recreate an ancient flood-like event on planet Earth?
Well, I'm not sure if they're going to try and create an event like that. I think it's more important for them to make us believe an event like that is going to take place. There is a subtle difference in that, because in getting you to believe a certain way, you effectively control the person in whom you're manipulating information going to that person. I'll rephrase that a bit better. If you control the information, then you control how people think. And what I'm picking up there is that while there is an element of environmental degradation, the possibilities of disaster on an environmental scale taking place, I personally follow the idea that there's more of that comes out of the cosmos than it does out of man-made techniques or attempts to do so. But this wouldn't stop them from trying to create the illusion that a disaster is on its way, or that, and here is the kicker, this is what I end with Saturn Death Cult, the illusion that the human species needs to be culled in order to save the planet, in order to save the species on the planet. We're a virus that needs to be brought back into line on a level that can be sustainable. All of this seems to be the general idea that is being promoted by much of the environmental lobby, particularly the environmental lobby at the corporate level. And to me, that's a very frightening thing, because when you look at the Saturn Death Cult go back into what I portray in the book and on the website, what I'm really leading people to an understanding is that these people might not necessarily know the cosmology behind where Saturn came from, that it was actually a sub-brown dwarf star hanging up in the celestial realms and so on. But they certainly understand the archetypes that have come down to us. They know how to manipulate those archetypes through rituals in order to create a sense of control over the rest of us. And that what they have come to their reasoning has led them to believe that they have to get their rituals right in order to trigger an event which they believe will be a re-entry into a new golden age. That seems to me to be the most malicious part of the whole Saturn death cult culture, is this idea that humanity is destined to go into a new golden age, but only a part of us, only some of us, only those who are worthy, so to speak. And in so doing, the imperative is not only to create rituals to trigger it, but to get the timing right, to create the environment necessary to trigger that. And it would seem, it does seem to me, it seems to a number of writers, that an integral part of that is this idea for a mass culling of the planet under the guise of environmental sustainability or what would have you. And so therefore, we are being manipulated into believing that mankind is mostly responsible as a whole for the degradation and possible end of this planet, or life as we know on this planet, and therefore drastic steps have to be taken. This is a very frightening thing, because these people are obviously setting themselves up to make the decision as to how those steps will be taken. And I personally believe that is a very real aspect to what is happening on this planet. And the scary part about it is not necessarily some hidden knowledge these people have, just the fact that they believe they have hidden knowledge that allows them to make these decisions on behalf of everybody on the planet.
Since you said that about population control, it's very interesting that you say that, because it seems like that's why that they push this illusion, if you will, and I really hope that people don't drink the Kool-Aid, Troy, is eugenics. Eugenics. Yes. When I saw AI, I was like, oh boy. It reminded me of eugenics. It reminds me of how one is trying to transform or implant us, change our DNA structure.
Absolutely.
And not just through the advent of technology and eventually being a surrogate, if you will, but through the advent of food. It's like they're creating all of these diversions, if you will, in some way, shape, or form. They're like, well, if you don't watch TV, we'll get you through the food. If you don't eat certain foods, we're going to get you through pharmaceuticals. Well, if you're not sick, we're going to get you through something else. So it's very
we'll just get you through the water supply.
Exactly. So it's very interesting how they are using the advent of technological aspects, if you will, the eugenics aspect, in order to control the population and also to implant individuals with certain technological advents of reality. And now I hear that IBM is literally trying to recreate the conscious mind, the brain, which I find insane.
Yes.
But it's very fascinating the route that they're going.
Well, this brings us directly back to Mr. Kubrick and his films, because when you watch 2001, of course, one of the possibly, arguably, the main character in there is Hal, the computer that literally becomes an ascendant form of life. He starts to think for himself, and he starts to militate against humans. He becomes the ultimate threat to humans, because Hal starts to believe that he is actually the next step in life's evolution, so to speak. Now, Kubrick explored this theme not only in 2001 and also in AI, but you can see elements of it in Full Metal Jacket. The idea of breaking down, through using the military as a metaphor, breaking down the humanity in an individual to form them into a machine that will do your bidding. And this is